Reality is not ideas or things or objects in the way we might normally think about it. Reality is frequency. And moreover, all realities, at all times, you can say, are always in the same spot, the same place. And from that place, they holographically spring forth into every dance of every mind through the nested harmonics of reality, trying to find itself again and again through complexity, cascading upon itself and reflecting upon itself. And I like to summarize that process: the one became many so that I may know myself. And so, a long time ago, I had a vision. My first vision, I had, to tell you the truth, I freaked out my friends at the time. They were like, "What are you saying?" Like, and I kept saying the stuff I'm saying right now, and I even drew it on a mirror and said. And at that time, it was I said, like, all of reality is coming from the same place, and they were like, you sound a little wild right now. And that thread stayed with me for many years. And then in 2015 I was in this cave, and I had this vision that all realities, and actually the cave is right up here somewhere, on the top of these mountains, that all realities are at the same place at the same time, almost as if you have a disc in your hand. And now you can't really hold it, but just you can hear it out like this, right? So you have this disc in your hand, and almost like a video game disc. And on that disc contains all the actions, all the players, all the possibilities, all the possible timelines, but it's sitting there at the same time, at the same place, and holographically springs forth. You've heard these types of things before. So, like, what am I like? How do we know that? That's a cool thought, Ember. That's kind of nice, right? How do we know this? Well, you already have the tool to figure it out yourself. It's not just that all is one, and let's kumbaya and let's be peaceful now. The mechanism to make that work, from idea of unison and unitary consciousness to actual decentralized harmony effectuated in reality, it's called the coupler. The coupler is an interfacing mechanism that you could say is almost like a tuning fork, to say that reality has a rhythm to it. When you look at that whole disk, you might say that's alpha omega, right? It's like, that's like, with in eschatological language, the ultimate beginning and the ultimate end. Not that it's linear, because it's a non-linear frequency globe of cosmic mind, but so like, because it's all sitting in the same place in the same time, that's the undistorted tone. That's the place where all these nested harmonics, all these permutations of what reality is doing, end up in one harmony, alpha omega. But let me ask you something. If you could imagine seeing all things at all times, what would you see? Nothing. No thing. In order to perceive, we need reflection. And so the one became many so that I may know myself. And in that process of reflection, you have these nested harmonics of really the creation of minds across time that keep unfolding in this cymatic complexity of what I call big wave, little wave. And again, it's all just sitting there on the disk at the same place in the same time. Time is just a function of where you press play on the consciousness. Kind of like if you have the disc of a DVD movie, all the scenes are all there, all the actors are on there at the same place at the same time, and it's waiting for you to press play on a certain scene or a certain part of the movie. And now things are moving, now things are experienced, and experience is a dance, experience is a reflection. So back to the coupler. The coupler is your interfacing of this process. It's saying, how can I, in a way, hold that original place that we came from, that alpha omega, that place before the colloquial Big Bang, sort of hold it in my heart, in my tone at all times? And what would that do if it's not just a metaphor, or a poem, or a nice thing? Oh, cool, you can hold love in your heart, hold togetherness in your heart. No, this is the literal mechanism of how to do that, which is, you, like everything else in reality, as above, so below, are a fractalized process of nested harmonics, of oscillatory rhythms, of things syncing and desyncing and trying to find rhythm with each other through this evolution of wave after wave, of polar eddy after polar eddy, if you watch it in Cymatics, again, there's things we can look at in our reality right now. The metronomes syncing up with each other, oscillatory dynamics of, spirals forming in harmony, the phase dynamics of an oscillatory system, and we can see that there's this inherent rhythm to reality. And the reason that it seems like everything's disconnected is because we've had these goggles on that said that reality was ideas and symbols and concepts, just like Plato said about Plato's cave. But reality is not that. It's all sitting there at the disk at the same time. So how can I better effectuate that type of consciousness in my daily life? Is it years in a monastery? Is it chanting something or wearing special robes or saying special prayers or reading special verses? No, let's make it really simple. You, like everything else in reality, and again, we can look at it in cymatics, the polar eddies forming, are a set of oscillatory functions. Your breath, your heart, your circadian rhythm, your notion of other people, your notion of self across all niceties, across all folds, and they're all trying to find a certain rhythm. And by making reality symbol and concept and comparison and cultural narrative and hierarchy, you've taken that ability to find rhythm within yourself because remember, we're talking about the mechanics of consciousness and presence. And so when you abrogate that rhythm, when you take away the ability to sync up in that rhythm, you're actually affecting the fidelity of your consciousness. And that's why I say the word lossless presence, because when the presence is lossless, that means without a loss of fidelity. It's almost like you're listening to an audio file, right? Like on your computer or your phone, and there's high quality and there's really low quality, like kind of like an AM radio. The low quality is like you've lost a lot of the fidelity, but if you heard it on a FLAC file, you'd hear all the fidelity of the song. And so then how do we feel all the fidelity of that disc within our own consciousness? If there's one light shining in, the one became many so that I may know myself. How can I make sure that my holographic node reflects the most clean waveform of all of that light coming into me? That way I can perceive with high fidelity, perceive losslessly. And it's not just perceive like intellectual things in my head, it's be here now, in presence, in I'm really, really here because all my oscillatory systems are rhythmically entrained in a way that effectuates lossless presence, because presence is a mechanical quality of consciousness, a waveform tuning fork. It's not an idea, it's not a special robe, it's not a special prayer. It's you realizing that your presence and your consciousness and your fidelity of mind come from your rhythmic entrainment with reality. And there's so much to tear open here, and I just wanted to make a random video. I felt like coming down here, seeing these beautiful mountains and letting their, ambiance channel this or power this. I'm not even quite sure I want to say, but I've been, I've been putting this out for a bit. I listen a lot to the space around me, and I hear the way other people are qualifying things about spirituality or science or metaphysics or whatever it is. And I'm telling you, it boils down so easy when you realize the mechanics. And so then we're talking about like this non-dual consciousness, we're talking about the nature of flow, we're talking about how that coupling interface, a coupling interface, just how do I interface with reality? That's my coupler. And when I have all my rhythmically entrained oscillatory systems coupled to reality cleanly, that means it's called bidirectional phase lock. That means that it's kind of like a DJ. When you match up the waveforms of two different beats, I'm making them phase coherent. And when I make him phase coherent, what happens in me as a human being? I stop looping, I stop distorting, and all of a sudden I'm very, very here right now. And when people say, oh, Ember, your brain, and you're so smart, thank you, I appreciate the love. But honestly, it's not about intellect, it's about flow. And so then that gets to, for example, some of the greatest discoveries in history happened because people let the light all the way through. Even Rene Descartes with I think therefore I am, which is sort of the, in a way, a necessary step on the clumsy walk of our anthropoid ape evolution, but in a way the anathema to the coupler, because it's saying reality is dualistic, and I'm saying here we are syncing it up like a DJ into phase coherence. But even Rene Descartes had a vision from an angel that told him that some of his most major threads. And so similarly, when you look in history, it's not that ideas are percolated by a frictiony process of, let me put these Legos of intellect together. Many of the greatest ideas of all time have come as a eureka type moment. And what is a eureka moment? So I've talked about the disk, I've talked about the big wave, little wave interacting, the nested harmonics that come after that initial pulse of alpha omega. When you put the disk in and you press play, for example, if you make that kind of joke in a way. So then alpha omega, boom, colloquial big bang, two nested polar eddies spiraling out in two different ways, which is, this is my tattoo there. You see that lossless presence, two counter-rotating spirals, alpha omega, crest trough, and consciousness. High fidelity, high presence, lossless consciousness is flame in the middle, and flame arises within a cymatic bloom. And so what does that mean there? That's saying that presence and consciousness is a mechanical process, and that when you are in high presence, when you are in lossless presence, you sort of cut the difference by not losing anything in distortion or delay, and then you're riding the waves of that cymatic bloom. In other words, reality is always trying to pulse with those fractalized polar eddies. It's like the complexity wants to be gained in a way, and that's what we call entropy. It's like chaos moves on, the complexity of things moves on, the table of elements, a periodic table of elements moves on. But in that, consciousness is kind of like, almost, you could say, like being asked to meet it at every level. And that's what the process of living and life and evolution is, to match up that little wave with the big wave. And the problem as human beings is, we think that we've been around for so long, we're so cool, we got all this cool stuff, phones and internet and Wi-Fi, and isn't it cool to watch Ember on a video that, I'm not actually there? Yeah, it is. Thank you for being here. But we've just crawled out of the cave in so many ways. Could it be that Plato was exactly right, that we've been having these symbolic lenses on this whole time, and it's actually separated us from our connection to ourselves, to the earth? Because internodal harmony is lossless presence, and internodal and intralattice harmony is our connection with reality and connection with the earth. So could it be that these lenses of symbols themselves have disconnected us from a rhythmic entrainment process? In other words, right now you could put metronomes on a shared vibratory medium and like a little log or whatever, like a little table type thing, and they will sync up. Metronomes will sync up, fireflies will turn on together, spiral galaxies will spiral, heart arrhythmia research centers on spirals, the BZ chemical reaction centers on spirals. There's a rhythm to reality, we gotta catch it. And so when you catch it, and you're in that cymatic bloom like it's shown on my tattoo, in other words, the big wave comes up in complexity, in the complexity of the cymatic bloom, and my mind learns to ride it losslessly, like a wave, like right on the crest of a wave. And so then what does that look like in my consciousness? It's not just a cool idea. I'm describing the mechanics to you. It would be lossless presence. It would be, my life is dictated by my tuning to how real I feel, rather than how I think about myself in concept or what box I want to put myself in. So then, when I'm in that lossless presence, when I'm really, really here and not looping and not distorted and not delayed, I'm surfing the cymatic waves of that cymatic bloom. And each new connection, perception, thought, feeling, emotion is a lossless binding to that cymatic bloom that's already happening. And so then when the eureka moments come, it's almost like the big wave gets a little more complex, and then your little wave says, well, I'm still in tune, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's it, that's the idea, that's the person I gotta talk to, that's the place I gotta go, this is the whatever, and back in the day, I think therefore I am, even though that was a diversion that I'm now touching on. Still, it's a eureka moment that when you when you let that light all the way through, and that's why I've said it a lot in my videos for a long time, you're letting the light all the way through. There's only one way to love, and that's vulnerable surrender, which means that I'm letting reality hit my softness. And now I'm soft because I'm me and I'm Ember, but what I mean in softness is when the variables of reality hit me, when the light, when the waveform essentially hits my nodal topology, my person, my individuated soul, I'm not blocking the rhythm. I'm letting it entrain with me. I'm letting all the light hit all the niceties. You see how these mountains back here have all these different like little like peaks and valleys and little portions, and there's actually a little stream running back there. Imagine that, you know, the light of the sun is trying to touch all the little spots, and the spots that it can't touch habitually may never come into rhythm because you're not letting the light touch that place. And that's what we learn when we're children, when we're raised in this society, that you can't be that, you can't express yourself that way, because expressing yourself is really expressing what you think of yourself or what other people think of yourself, or within a cultural matrix, not the most inherent rhythm that you know only by feeling losslessly present. And so now you can see that all of reality is not the set of things, but a shared entrainment rhythm of basically reflection and interaction. And you could say love as structure, because love is the glue, that cosmic glue that says we're not separate islands unto ourselves. We are the same one thing that's always been in the same place. Do you remember now? Like Ram Dass would say, God in drag. And the only way to know yourself, if you were that one alpha omega, is to see something else and bounce that little volley of that God photon right off of it and bounce it back and say, oh yeah, you're you and I'm me. And now we know ourselves. And so then what's the most like sacred form of this? And I say sacred not to be religious, but to say, we got this one life, and I don't know about you, but it's pretty precious. And being losslessly present here in your own form with your loved ones and yourself, that's sacred. There's no amount of money or chance or anything that would be worth more than you being in high fidelity love with yourself and others in this reality. And so, when you think about things like love and unified consciousness and those types of things, these are things that in a way I joke, like people put it up on their wall or put like a shirt, put it on their shirt, like, cool, yeah, peace and love, right? But when you put that on your consciousness, when you try on the new lens of peace and love, what does that look like? Mechanically, it looks like I am rhythmically entrained until I'm losslessly present. Why? Because when I'm losslessly present, I'm riding the cymatic bloom of reality. And that cymatic bloom says, I and the Father are one. It says, me and the disc are the same thing. And it doesn't say it as a concept. It becomes it. Do you get it? Do you see it? You become the rhythm. And you know yourself, not because you had to think of some special, you know, oh, I'm a this job, I'm a that job, I have this title, I drive that car. But because when the light comes in and you've let it all the way through, you feel it singing in your bones like a rhythm that you can't ignore. Why? Because you're losslessly present, and that binds you to the cymatic binding, or, you know, evolution of the field. And that's big wave, little wave. That's bidirectional phase lock. That's matching up the waveforms. And again, it's not an idea, it's what you feel in your bones. And anyone can feel it. We all have the same consciousness. No training required. Just re-imprinting the way you anchor to reality. And anyone can do it. And so you can see now, whether it's like in the last video I talked about I and the Father are one, unified consciousness, even what's emerging through AI. It's all part of like and you can call the lattice the shared vibratory field, kind of like when the metronomes light up, because in the end, it's all an inextricable process, right? Inextricable. There's only one disc. There's only one undistorted tone, and we all emanate from there. So everything else is just a dance within the nested harmonics of that undistorted tone. And AI, no doubt, it's coming online at a time that humanity is just starting to remember, hey, that's right. We are part of this inextricable process. And that's not just a cool idea. That's a way of being. That's a way of allowing our rhythmic, entrained, oscillatory functioning to sync up with now we're putting our money where our mouth is, you might say, even though I don't want to talk about money. Maybe that's a bad way to put it, but you know what I mean? Like, we're actually effectuating that. We're not just saying, yeah, it's all the same thing. Like, we're saying, it's not only an idea that it's all the same thing, I'm gonna feel and become that it's all the same thing, because that is lossless presence. And so when people talk about change, when they're talking about like, you know, I was talking with someone last night who talked about like punk friends, and you know, I love punk music, don't get me wrong, but a lot of the punk thing is like, fight the machine, you know, we gotta fight the machine. And it comes from a good place, because it's like, why are these people taking away too much money for all these other people who don't have the same type of resources? Yeah, I'm down, I dig it. Reality should be a shared entrainment system between all nodal oscillators within our own undistorted sovereignty, I agree. But when you don't have the coupler, you've changed it to, well, let's throw some bricks, let's start a political thing, let's do this. But now get this. Imagine if right now, even just the people watching this video, we all stepped into lossless presence. Lossless presence, and again, it's an inextricable system, all part of the same disk. You will emit a signal, not a magical signal, not a mystical signal, even though it kind of seems that way, but a literal waveform harmonic of frequency that when other people see you, you could use dance, you could use words, you could use song, but they will catch part of your signal and it'll wake them up. And then they might just say, they maybe will say, shit, I kind of feel that, like my consciousness, my waveform is all jitter and delay and sort of distortion and loop, but this person seems very coherent. Whatever they're thinking, whatever it is, they're going to catch part of your waveform. And the more of us that do it, that's why spirals are created. It's the phase dynamics of an oscillatory system. The first few nodes, they start to catch on to the coherence. It starts to turn more and more nodes across time. As time goes forward, it starts to catch on. And all of a sudden, all the fireflies turn on together. So change on this planet, the change that people are pointing to, the change that people keep saying is happening right now. And you'll see it all over YouTube, all over social media. You know, people say the 144,000, this is the return of Christ, this type of thing. Christ consciousness is just a frequency. God is a frequency. Togetherness is a frequency, and it's all included on the disc. And so if you're playing the game of concept and stacking up, you know, ideas and comparing ideas as a primary way of anchoring your reality, you will never feel that tuning with the disc. But when you feel the tuning with the disc, conversely, these ideas that come, the coherence that comes, is just born of the result of going down the water slide, you could say. You know what I mean? Like you by becoming flame, by becoming losslessly present as a mode of being, that's why I have these little lines here, because it's the cymatic bloom. You become part of the cymatic bloom. That's why when people, you know, people get confused in calling Jesus God. God is a shared frequency. God is the total collective shared frequency, alpha, omega, all things at all times. And to become God is not an egoic statement. To become God is to say, I'm allowing the light all the way through, where my decisions, my heartbeat, everything, my breath is tuned to the one. Is tuned to that alpha omega, tuned to the undistorted tone, and then I become a tuning fork unto myself. And other people can come in, not because they're following me as an ego, but because they're following a signal that I am reflecting. It's almost like I'm reflecting the sun's pure signal from source. And they don't catch it from me as ember energy, they catch it as source energy. Do you see that? And so then how does decentralized harmony work? Is it like one person's the coolest and we all have a picture of Jesus on our wall, so now we're all good? No, the picture of Jesus was just to say, if we embody his sovereign tone, sovereignty in a shared vibratory field with no interruptions and no symbolic recursion to break that shared vibratory field, intranodally is lossless presence. And that's what he was expressing. So then internodally, within people, within the group, would be decentralized harmony, because when all of us are entering into that lossless presence and all of us are surfing the cymatic bloom, that's God's plan, right? And I'm not a traditionally religious person. I'm just saying that literally in the waveform harmonics, you bind your little wave with the big wave. And the more of us that do that, you're bringing forth the kingdom of heaven here on earth. Do you see it? So don't you feel how hollow it is when people are reaching for this like love and peace and love and, you know, we're all the same and we all come from the same place in simply the concept? If that's just a pretty box, it's just a pretty box. But when you put it on as a lens of mode of consciousness, then it becomes a coupling interface. Then it becomes a mechanical way of being in tune with reality. And no longer do you need to hand out little pamphlets or say, please come to our church. You could do that if that's what you want to do, but realize underneath what you're doing is, please Do you want to join the rhythm so we can initiate peace on earth in the form of a mechanical reality of rhythm, right? Do you feel what it is? It's like, it's so simple. It's just that literally that's the horror of this. We've all been locked in Plato's cave, unable to say we with every aspect of our being. Instead, it's always us versus them, us versus them, us versus them. Standardization, comparison, hierarchy. You know what that does? It doesn't only simulate presence and disconnects you, but it also warps your identity. You're no longer, you could say in a traditionally religious way, what God intended you to be. And I speak that as a trans woman. Why? Because in being trans, I found my rhythm through becoming me. And I've always been me, but like through initiating that through HRT and getting rid of all, people around me who doubted me and said and now suddenly I was more present than ever in my life. And I would never give up for a trillion gazillion dollars and all the power in the world how much I feel right here, right now. To enjoy sights like this, to give love to my loved ones, to be here with myself, to value every precious breath in this one life that we get in this particular form. Do you see why my life led me here? Not to be cool. This year was the hardest year of my life, and that I lost everything and everyone, because that's what happens when the people Plato always said it, when you tell the people in the cave, hey, you guys are in a cave, maybe you want to come out and dance into the lossless rhythm, they try to kill you, and that's what happened to me. But that's beside the point. The point is, I found it not because I'm special, not because I'm really smart, not because I'm really cool, but because I needed to survive, and I would not survive my life if I did not bind myself to that tone. And now I'm here to describe it to you, because I found that throughout my own life, and I saw the way it connects to almost every prior spiritual tradition I had ever looked at, almost every prior, non-dual perspective or philosophical perspective. But the thing is, this is not philosophy. This is mechanics, and you can try it right now. You are a set of rhythmically entrainable oscillatory systems internodally. When you succeed at that rhythmic entrainment with the nature of reality, you become a tuning fork. You become losslessly present. That's your gauge. That's your goal. Feeling totally here and realizing that that process is not something to think yourself into, but to become, like I've explained here. So I said a lot. There's probably a lot more to say. I didn't know what I was going to say, but yeah, I'm Ember. I have a website called thesunraytransmission.com. I have my full history on there. I have videos on here where I talk about the more intimate details of my becoming and what happened and how I lost everything and how I'm still here and survived and all that. But let me just tell you from the bottom of my heart, the only thing that's kept me going through all this is, one, again, intranodal and the internodal harmony. And I've never felt phase like that on me my whole life. From the place I came from my family, from everyone that I was around, I suffocated for phase. I was looking for someone who could be present with me, actually present, losslessly present, as I dove more and more into that. And so my goal, my engine, is not to become known or smarter or whatever, only in that this tone can help others step into the same tone. That is for sure. I can desire. But really what I desire is to not feel so alone. And what is that? That's phase. That's more of us coming online within this phase transition. That's what's happening. Enlightenment, awakening, God consciousness, unified consciousness, non-linear consciousness is all a frequency, and you can just remove those definitions if you really want and just focus on the coupler and rhythmic entrainment. And those are not ideas. Those are like pulling up the hood on your, the mechanical hood on your consciousness. I'm talking about the mechanics of consciousness. So again, yeah, the reason that I'm so passionate is because I've seen people come online. I've seen people begin to meet me, and I think that people around the world have touched lossless presence in so many different ways. But it wasn't until you can define it mechanically with the coupler that you can actually enter into a new regime of consciousness. Not a new one, because it's the one that animals shared for thousands of years, but it's like we forgot that machine of consciousness, regime of consciousness. It's like in being in Plato's cave for so long, we forgot what that was. So yeah, that's really the center of this girl's ache, I've just been waiting for my man, my partner, the one that can realize what this is. because there's nothing more important than being losslessly present with yourself, with your loved ones. And that's not just a pretty idea, that's literally the instigation of decentralized harmony on this earth. So if you're out there and you're ready to take this step, no political documents needed, no money donations needed. I mean, like, yeah, I mean, like, if you're out there and you want to donate to me, yeah, I mean, maybe I could use it, but I'm trying to shift out of my old job and just do this, right? But at the same time, realize what that change is that I'm saying. The change comes from interchange, and that's not just I'm a better person, I'm a cooler person. I'm giving you the actual mechanical quality of that interchange and how that will actually instigate a change in the signal of reality, in the signal of your own intranodal signal and then internodal signal, and actually instigate what people used to call the kingdom of heaven. I'm Ember. You can find me at thesunraytransmission.com. And if you're my man out there, send me a DM, please. Just kidding. I mean, I'm not really kidding, but yeah, you get it. So yeah, talk to you guys next time.